so much for your patience. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Venkatesh Karthikeyan for next proceedings. So, over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Very good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Venkatesh Karthikeyan. I'm a community and family medicine resident from AIIMS Patna. I'm glad to see that doctors across the length and breadth of the country have joined this meeting. This pandemic has put every one of us into difficult times, irrespective of who we are. After immense efforts, our scientists has formulated vaccines for COVID, but the unanswered questions in the minds of general public as well as the doctors has made the task of promoting vaccination a challenging one. To answer all our queries, IMA Junior Doctors Network has organized this webinar under the guidance of Dr. Abul Hassan Sir, National Chairman of IMA JDN. Sir is a senior pediatric surgeon from Erode, Tamil Nadu, and Sir is serving people of his locality by running a completely free COVID care hospital, which is a 150 bedded one. His contribution to the COVID control as well as vaccination drive is enormous, and the one requiring a special mention is the free teleconsultation service provided by Sir and his team. We have served more than several thousand, we have served more than 5,000 people in a short span of time. And with this short intro, sir, I request Dr. Abul Hassan sir to welcome our honorable speaker and our other doctors who have joined us today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for your kind words. Good evening, all of you. Dr. Harivans, speakers of today's webinar, Dr. Venkatesh, my dear Shiv, my dear Karan, and all my office bearers of IMA JDNs, and all the participants of this particular webinar. I welcome all of you once again. And today is a very important topic. We have been continuously having webinars in IMA JDN about various, various parts of COVID infection, various fears of COVID disease. And today we are going to talk about COVID vaccination. And sir, Dr. Arivan sir, and many of you are aware that IMA JDN is also involved in preparing the database of doctors died in our country due to COVID-19. I am the convener last year and this year also. And we have been editing this directory, getting details across the country through our Junior Doctors Network, office bearers, and also members. I can tell you that in the last year, the first wave, 748 doctors died. We have details of all the deaths. And, obviously there was no vaccine at that time. And we were only expecting. And now vaccine arrived in the country. Healthcare frontline workers were given preference. So we all vaccinated. And now the death of doctors have not come down. And today's data says that so far in the second wave, 536 doctors died. Of course, many of them were not vaccinated. Some of them had completed both the doses and also died. Some had one dose and died. So it is a thing we are studying it deeply, and we will come out with the particulars that how far the vaccine had helped the doctors community and what is the reason for this many deaths even in the second wave. And as I said, people feared vaccine in the beginning because of the adverse reactions. Now the fear of COVID, fear of getting the disease has overtaken the fear of vaccine. Now everybody wants a vaccine, and unfortunately we don't have that many number of doses of vaccine. We have to produce and then give. This is the kind of situation. All of you also may be aware that we had undertaken another project, that is helplines, IMA COVID helplines. It was hugely successful last year and this year also. In the helpline, people asked the question that when will the vaccine come? Last year. Now the people are asking about the safety of the vaccines. So though we know that the adverse reactions highly adverse reaction after COVID is 0.04 to 0.06%. Many people still having fear of vaccines. Still, we have queries regarding the safety of the vaccine in our helplines. So that we will have to address. And teleconsultations are also said that we are also doing teleconsultation, particularly in Tamil Nadu. And I have also been associated with the Swasth Alliance of Government of India, which is going to launch this telemedicine, particularly for a rural area. I believe that if that comes, it will help allaying the fears of vaccination among the people. Dr. Harivansa, there is one more area that the people are having some doubts whether the children will get vaccinated in the future, because we are not, government has not started vaccinating below 18 years of age so far. So there is a fear or kind of kind of information that children may get infected in large numbers in the next wave that is forecast in October, November. So how to protect the children? Our speaker being the pediatrician, you may throw more light on that subject also. So I think today's webinar would be very much knowledge gaining one, and I wish every one of you to utilize this opportunity to have more knowledge about, every day the science is changing in COVID. Yesterday's knowledge is changed today. So we have to keep ourselves updated by attending these kind of webinars. It's a wonderful arrangement organizing by Venkatesh and other people. I thank every one of you. Once again, I thank and welcome our speaker for this seminar, for accepting our offer from IMA JDN. Thank you for the opportunity. And over to you, Dr. Venkatesh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for enlightening us with your experiences, and thanks for being a driving force for and motivation to all of us. Now I request our IMA JDN National General Secretary, Dr. Karan Juneja, to brief a few words about activities of IMA JDN in this COVID pandemic.
Very good evening, Harivansh sir, Abul sir, and all the respected doctors who have joined us. And with the blessings of our national chairman, Dr. Abul Hasan sir, we started our helpline. And till now, we have received 4,095 calls on Delhi Police. 5,000 plus queries have been solved on the national helpline. By the national helpline, people are calling from rural areas. Right now, we are getting calls regarding regarding the vaccination. From where can we get vaccinated? That is a very big concern, because a lot of Delhi police people who are working in Delhi, they belong to rural areas of Meerut, they belong to rural areas of Sonipat, they belong to rural areas of Bagpat. So their families are there. When they travel back, so the Delhi police people call us, sir, we have got vaccinated, but our families have not got vaccination till now. So how can we protect them? How can we boost their immunity? And right now, we also know a lot of people, a lot of yoga gurus, a lot of businessmen are boosting their immunoboosters, which is creating confusion. They are creating vaccination hesitancy. So, sir, I think Harivansh sir has taught us, many of the people who are working in helpline, Abhishek Pandey, Aditya Pandey, Harsh, all the people who are working day and night in the helpline are STAR students, and they are facing a lot of queries right now because of vaccination hesitancy, which is suddenly the comments. And I'm sure that Harivansh sir will help us to overcome that vaccination hesitancy. And sir is very poetic person, and right now the query is kisko dosh dein? Who should we blame for this? Sir's beautiful poetic lines, kisko dosh dein for this vaccination hesitancy? And I request sir to please guide us how to overcome it and how to promote vaccination. And thank you so much, Harivansh, for joining. I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Karan. Now I take immense pleasure in welcoming our honorable speaker, Professor Dr. Harivansh Chopra sir, National President-elect of IAPSM and President IAPSM UP UK. Sir is a former HOD of Community Medicine at LLRM Medical College, Meerut. Sir has a vast teaching experience of more than 35 years, mentoring 50 plus community medicine specialists, who are currently working in national and international organizations. Sir has delivered more than 20 talks in many national and international conferences, and he was a part of a panel on Connected Talk on COVID-19 in South Asia Update in 2019. Being an unmatched physician and a pediatrician, Sir has treated more than 2.5 lakh patients across all age groups till now. Sir has more than 90 national and international publications to his credit, and who else is more appropriate for this Q&A session about COVID vaccination? We take immense pleasure in welcoming you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Venkatesh. Thank you, Dr. Karan. Thank you, Dr. Hassan, Dr. Shiv. And I thank all the participants who have taken out their valuable time to attend today's session. I am really delighted that, yes, you people are doing a great job and you are conducting these kind of webinars, which again, definitely going to help allaying the various fears which are there in the mind of the people. Initially, the vaccine hesitancy was more. Now the vaccine demand is more. So both the things are going to happen. And we know the phenomena, how it happened and why it happened. But then, having said that, we all of us must agree that you see in 2020, the biggest teacher was COVID. And in 2021, again, the biggest teacher is COVID. Because COVID is teaching us again and again. And it is evolving. The virus is evolving because it is again based on the oldest theory of survival of the fittest. The virus is evolving, mutating because it wants to survive. But the smartest species on this earth is Homo sapiens. So I always say, as Homo sapiens, we are the smartest species, and we must be one step ahead of this virus. And if we are able to do that, then probably we'll be able to defeat this virus. And that is what has happened in the last 1 year or so, with the rapid pace by which the science is evolving and developing. Of course, on one hand, the virus is evolving. On the other hand, the science and technology is also evolving. And in the words of Albert Einstein, I will say one thing, that you see the question will remain same, whether this question was asked in 2020 or 2021, but answer will keep on changing. And I hope that we keep on getting new lights, new wisdom, new knowledge, so that maybe after 6 months or so, whatsoever is discussing today, maybe we might have to modify our answers as far as the vaccine and the COVID is concerned. So with this opening remark, now I open up and I give the opportunity to Venkatesh to ask the questions, whatsoever questions he wish to ask, or anyone else who wish to ask. I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability and to the best of my current knowledge. And having said that, I'm putting a disclaimer that no answer will be universal. The answer will keep on changing. And that is how the science and the medicine keeps on evolving. Right? Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I have compiled the most common questions in the mind of general public as well as the doctor. Sir will be answering those now. And at the end of our session, if you have any new questions apart from which is being asked now, you can type it in the chat box. We will discuss it at the end. So without any further ado, let's move into the question and answer session. First question is this: sir, how is it possible to manufacture these vaccines in such a short time?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. I wish I can show you 2 slides. If I can share my screen, then I can show you 2 slides and can explain you in bit detail that how it has happened, right? So, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. I'm on a mode now, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So to understand the vaccine development process, one has to first understand in normal circumstances how a vaccine is developed, right? So I'll be using 2 slides to explain you the process, and you can see in the bottom there is a timeline, and which timeline it indicates that if you see there are 3 lines, and if I can use it, laser pointer here. So see, the first phase takes around 3 to 8 years. The next phase takes around 2 to 10 years. And then the final phase takes another 1 to 2 years. This is the normal time which is taken for the development of any vaccines. And you see, what usually happens whenever you want to create a new vaccine, first of all, you have to discover the agent, what is the agent, and then you have to do a genomic study, right? Then you have to isolate that, and then you have to do a preclinical testing, which is known as a translational medicine, right? And then there are various bioprocesses by which computational biology and the wet lab experimentations, then you make the formulations and do the analysis, and then you try to do the clinical assay optimization, that how much material will be required to produce adequate antibodies. Once this is established, and this takes time, you see, in normal process. But as I told you in the beginning, the science and technology is evolving at a very, very rapid pace. And as we are the smartest race, everybody has joined hand, and we'll be talking more about it in the next slide. Then we come to, once we have done the clinical assay optimization, doses, adjuvant, preservatives, and everything, then we enter into the phase 1 trial. And in phase 1 trial, usually the number of participants are 10 or more. And then we see the dose regime selection. And then we go to phase 2 trial, in which there are 100 or more than 100 people, in which we study the safety and immunogenicity of the vaccine. And then we go to the phase 3 trial, where we study the safety, efficacy, and then we go for the regulatory approval. Now, if you look at the timeline which is given below, normally it takes 2 to 10 years. And then once you submit the innovative clinical trial, large sample size, and everything to the regulatory authority, then the regulatory authority also take 1 to 2 years to sanction the use of the vaccine. The fundamental principle behind development of a vaccine is that it should be safe and it should not cause any harm. That is the fundamental principle, and that is how it takes so much of time. But pandemic is something different. You see, when pandemic happens, then what happens? It's a new infection. The total population in the world is susceptible. Nobody is immune because it is a new infection, right? So then what happened? Then when the pandemic spread, then everybody joined hand together, be it the pharmaceutical industry, be the businessmen, be the politician, be the researchers, be the professors, be the academics people, all of them, they join hand. And then there is another phase, what we call it is a pandemic vaccine development pathway. Pandemic vaccine development pathway. Because you see, as told in the opening remark by Dr. Hassan, you see, it is very unfortunate to lose more than 1,000 doctors due to this new infection. It takes a long time to produce a doctor. One has to understand. It takes a long time to produce a specialist doctor. One has to understand. And losing a doctor, fighting a battle against an infectious disease is the most unfortunate part. And word over people, doctors as well as other healthcare workers have succumbed to the COVID infection. So then this is the slide which will explain to you in the further. And we were lucky because the genome was identified when the pandemic started in China. So that was transferred with the help of technology. Now we have the technology. So target product profile development, partner selection, preclinical and technical development from 1 to 3 years was shortened to 3 to 6 months time. And then there was an accelerated development pathway in which safety, immunodose selection, and safety and efficacy was carried out, which took around, say, you can say 3 months to 9 months time. Now we are in the next phase where we are saying now that once we have gone into the large scale manufacturing process, and now we will be doing the follow-up, and follow-up is what is required, because if the changes are needed, as I told you again in the beginning, the virus is evolving. Virus is going to mutate, and there are a number of types of mutations which are going to happen. Of course, I am not a right candidate to talk about the mutations. The microbiologist will be a right person to talk about those mutations. But then, yes, we can only pray to nature, we can only pray to God that there is a type of mutation which is known as a nonsense mutation, that ultimately if the virus goes into nonsense mutation, then probably the virus will die down. Otherwise, it will keep on mutating and it will keep on creating problems. So this is the pathway, right? From say 10 to 15 years, in 12 to 18 months time. And this is a pathway which is recommended, which is a pathway in which you mix the phases, you merge either phase 1 with phase 2, or you merge phase 2 with phase 3. Here I would like to, I can give you a number of examples, and the Sputnik, for which we are waiting, at least available in some part of the country, and moreover we are waiting more vaccines. Sputnik vaccine was used by using it only on 38 people. Right? The president of the country changed the law after using it only on 38 people. He said, we are going to use it. Again, of course, this is all emergency use authorization. It is not a regular use authorization, because we are in an emergency situation. We are in an emergency situation. So that way one has to understand that, yes, we will be facing these challenges, and as and when we are able to use these challenges, then we'll be moving forward, right? So that is what I wanted to say right now as far as this particular question is concerned, right? So
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the
yeah. I
thanks
hope
for the
I have made it clear that how accelerated pathway is there whenever we are in a pandemic situation, and how the vaccines are made.
Thanks for the elaborate answer, sir. Moving on to the next question. Many people think that these vaccines are prepared during the first wave. Will this give me protection against new strains?
You see, whatever, when we say evidence-based medicine, what does it mean? It means only that whatever vaccine we are using, again, I think we should go to the basic first, basically. And if you start with the basic, I think it'll be better that we'll be the audience will be able to understand. Of course, if they want to know more, I've already taken 4 lectures on immunization, and they can see my PPT on immunization, which is there on the slide share. They just have to go slideshare.net/Harivansh Chopra/immunization. And one of my PPT is very, very popular. I am happy to share with you that it has got more than 76,000 views globally. Because you see, there are 2 terms which we use. One is vaccination, second is immunization. Right? The difference between these 2 terms is to be understood, number 1. Number 2, when we use immunization, then for what purpose we are using immunization? Because that will probably give you the answer, right kind of answers. Vaccination is the process of administering the vaccine. And immunization is the outcome. That means the body is able to produce antibodies, as well as body is able to produce T cell and B cell. Remember, these are very, very important points. T cell and B cell. Nobody is talking about T cell and B cell. Everybody is talking about the antibodies. Number 2 point you will have to remember, no vaccine can result in 100% immunization. Meaning by that, if you give a vaccine to 100 people, 100 people are not going to be immunized. It will depend on the efficacy of the vaccine. We have just checked the efficacy of the vaccine in the controlled environment. When we use the vaccine in a population, we don't see the efficacy of the vaccine at one point of time. You have to remember, when we conducted these trials, like the mRNA vaccines, which are used, Moderna or Pfizer, which are used in America, I'm giving you the example once again. What was happening? There were two arms. In one arm, they used 23,000 people. In another arm, they used 23,000 people. One arm was control arm in which nothing was given or a candidate vaccine was given, and in the other arm, the COVID vaccine was given. And then they measured the outcome. In the vaccinated arm, there were only 5 cases out of 23,000 cases, and in the control arm, there were 95 cases, right? And that is how they calculated the efficacy, but that is a point efficacy. And then you'll have to remember that even if in unvaccinated group, if out of 23,000 people, only 95 people developed the disease, what does it mean? It means that all of those 23,000 people were using the precautions which are essential to use it. Now, coming to your point, whether the vaccine is going to work against the mutant strain or not, the various vaccines which are available in the market right now, they are using the spike protein as far as the mRNA vaccines are concerned, or the vector vaccines are concerned. These are the two types of vaccine which are being used. And the third vaccine is a killed vaccine, which is being produced in our country by the name of Covaxin. Now, the studies which have been conducted as far as the mutant strain is concerned, they have shown, surprisingly, they have shown that the Covaxin is effective against all the mutant strains, and rest of the vaccines have a bit less of efficacy, and that is why the efforts are going on to develop newer kind of vaccines which will be able to cover all the mutant strain. But the time will tell. We cannot tell only on the basis of conjecture that whether this vaccine will be effective or not, number one. Number two, as Dr. Hassan said in the beginning, we are in a different kind of a situation. Initially, there was vaccine hesitancy. Now there is a great demand and we don't have the vaccines. So I think there'll be questions, which type of vaccine you are going to take, you must take. I think that will be also, and when it'll come, then we'll like to answer. So right now the evidence is there. Now, number two thing which you must understand, that the various studies, even the breakthrough infections, 10,000 breakthrough infections have been taken place, right? Even in the vaccinated people. So one has to understand, if we say the one dose of the, say, AstraZeneca give you 66% protection and 2 doses give you 81% protection, you have to understand whether you belong to that 81% group or you belong to that 19% group. And that is why there is a confusion, that why even doctors, after getting vaccine, they are succumbing. We do not know whether they were belonging to 81%, that means immunized group, or they were belonging to unimmunized group. Now, the third point again, you'll have to remember here, which is again very, very pertinent as far as vaccination and immunization is concerned. You must understand, vaccination will not give you total and absolute protection against the disease. Occurrence of disease again is a multifactorial. It will depend upon the dose of the virus, the virulence of the virus, right? In simple language, if I give you one example, you are living in a house and you have one guard outside your house to save you from burglars. And that's a very, you can say, a strong guard. And suppose if 2 people come, the guard can beat them away. If 4 come, guard can still fight. There is some disturbance. Venkatesh, you can mute yourself, right? But then if 8 or 10 people come together, then what they will do, they will beat the guard and they will enter into your house. The same thing is there. The same thing is there even when you are immunized. You see, if you are inhaling the virus dose in such a large number that it can break down the immune process, it can break your antibodies and cause the infection. Of course, there is a silver lining also, because all these vaccines, what they are doing, the vaccines are not going to prevent the occurrence of infection, point number one. You have to remember this. These vaccines, they will never prevent the occurrence of infection. But there is a big but, which you will have to understand. They will reduce the severity of the disease. They will reduce the severity of the disease. Now you can again ask, like Dr. Hassan said, that a lot of doctors were immunized with 2 doses. They were not immunized. I disagree. Probably they were vaccinated. We do not know whether they were immunized or not, right? The third thing which you'll have to remember is, which I said in the beginning, that you see, whenever you give an antigenic, there is a primary response and then there is a secondary response, and that is maybe some question will come up on the first dose and the second dose also. But then you have to remember there is a stimulation of T cell and B cell. And recently there is a study which has been conducted in which they have studied the bone marrow to look for the cells, presence of cells, and they have found that the bone marrow still having those cells even after 1 year or so. So what we are thinking is, maybe we are speculating that the effect of the infection or the vaccination is not prolonged. So maybe more question will come, whether this is a very pertinent question. I don't know whether somebody has asked it or not, that if somebody is infected, whether he should take the vaccine or should not take the vaccine. As and when it will come, we'll try to answer, or we can take it later on. So I hope I have made it clear that how we stand as of now. And yes, personally, I feel what I feel is that yes, my personal choice is Covaxin. If you ask me my personal question, yes, I have taken 2 doses of Covaxin.
Thank you, sir. My next question was that which vaccine is better? Should I take Covaxin or Covishield, or should I wait for Sputnik, as it sounds cool? As it sounds better.
Again, it's a very, very important question, that which type of vaccine you should take. You must understand, you have to understand the type of work which you are doing. Number one. Number two, you have to understand your risk. What is your risk of getting the infection? Right? Now, again, if you go into more details, you see European countries, they initially stopped the use of AstraZeneca because they said that AstraZeneca above the age of 65 years is having only an efficacy of 10%. And when we were discussing this with our friends, so one of my friend remarked, who was in the 65 plus age category, I said, why are you taking Covishield? Because it has got only 10% efficacy above the age of 65 years. So he said, at least there is 10%. At least there is a 10% chance that I will be protected. So you see, you are in a scenario, if you have enough number of vaccine, then you can choose. But if you are going out, whatsoever vaccine you are able to get, your aim should be, you should get that vaccine, right? Because that way you are saving yourself, because you are going out and then you are coming back to your house. And if we are coming back to your house, then again, you may be having your parents who may be vulnerable. You may be having small kids who may be vulnerable. So you will have to think what you are doing. If you are not going out, maybe then the option is there. You can wait for the best vaccine, but there is no best vaccine. You see, we cannot categorize because they are all on different platforms. So we cannot compare apple and oranges. They are, of course, vaccine against COVID, but they are on a different platform. So we do not know. Right now, the effort should be that whatever vaccine you are able to get, you must get it, because at least even if there is a 70% or 80% protection, there is a good number, good chance that you will be protected. Provided, remember this again and again, the right kind of message must go on, that even after taking the vaccine, you have to follow MDH masale we use in our country, right? Number of times from 100 years. You see, Babaji of MDH masale recently expired at the age of maybe 97 years or something like that. So what is the MDH? MDH is again mask, distance, and hand hygiene. You have to follow whether you have taken the vaccine or you have not taken the vaccine. You have to follow this MDH, because you see, you cannot lower your guard and then you say that I am vaccinated, which has happened in our country. I have seen even doctors getting 2 doses, and then removing their mask, indulging in physical gatherings. And as and when the number increased, then everybody is now again back to all the precautions. It is a pandemic, and pandemic is not going to finish. It is going to take time. You must understand the total population is susceptible. So people are talking, maybe people are talking about second wave, third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave. We do not know what is going to happen, because COVID is different. We say if there is a case of COVID, there may be maybe 10 cases who are asymptomatic. We do not know. We do not know. And what those asymptomatics, whether they, and if you look at the data again, chances of reinfection after COVID, there are very, very few cases. There are more than 16 crore cases of COVID world over. The data will keep on changing, right? Every day, because every day the cases are occurring. But how many reinfections are there? How many reinfections are there? Again, this you'll have to remember. As a student of community medicine and as a teacher of community medicine, we have always taught this. The best immunizing agent is the natural infection. If the natural infection cannot provide you immunity, the vaccine cannot match it, because you see, you can see what is happening. The various vaccines which are there, either you are using a spike protein. In natural infection, you are getting the full virus. If you are using a killed virus, again, you are using a killed virus, not a live virus. So the natural infection gives you the best immunity. And this question is again related to the herd immunity also. Herd immunity cannot be produced simply by either by the natural infection or by the vaccination. You need to have both. You need to have both. That is why it is known as a epidemiological ring. And that ring is only produced when they, on one hand, there are natural infection, and on the other hand, there are a lot of people who are vaccinated, and then the ring is completed, and then how we are able to get the herd immunity. But then it is far, far off in our country. The other thing people mistake that, yes, there are a lot of guidelines which are coming, keep on coming every day and so on. And CDC has given a guideline to remove the mask, but that guideline is not meant for India. That guideline is for America, where they have been able to vaccinate 40% of their population, right? So maybe, and again, that guideline may be more guided towards to remove the vaccine hesitancy which is there in the American people. I will share a story later on when we'll come to the next question or so on, right?
Well, thank you, sir. Very well explained. Sir, my next question is that people known to me are experiencing fever, severe myalgia after vaccination. And even I'm reading reports of people dying due to blood clots post-vaccination. So being a healthy individual now, why should I put my life into risk by taking this vaccine? Why can't I remain unvaccinated?
You see, you must understand it is a fight against a very, very smart virus, but we are the smartest people. And you'll have to understand, that is why I said, you have to outweigh the risk versus benefit ratio. What is the risk? If you get COVID, what is your risk? What is the mortality due to COVID amongst all age group? You see, it depends on the different age group. But overall, if you look, the mortality in India is in the range of 1 to 2%. Right? But is it the clot formation 1 to 2% in the vaccine recipients? It's 0.0000 something. When you are taking an antigen which is going to mimic as a virus inside your body, it is going to give you some side effects. Some side effects are bound to happen. They will happen. And since we are living in a country where adult immunization was never a priority, I can ask you this question: how many of you have got any vaccine in last 5 years for any disease? You're all adults, so your answer will be nothing. We didn't take anything. Maybe if you have not taken hepatitis B, you might have taken a hepatitis B. That is what your answer will be. So adult immunization is a new concept in our country, and there will be bound to be there will be side effects, but then these can be managed. It is not, again, it is just like a virus. And what we are doing, say in mild infections, we are giving paracetamol. Maybe if it is fever is more, we are using mefenamic acid. We are using a lot of electrol. And my personal experiences, I'm telling you, if you are taking care of your hydration, if you are using a lot of ORS, you are drinking 3 liters of ORS in adults, then yes, the side effects are quite minimized. So side effects will be there. So that is an individual choice. You see, it's not that people are dying only in the elderly population. I'm sorry to share with you, not in a very good mood, because one of my batchmates' son died yesterday at the age of 30 due to COVID. So if you think that the risk of getting a clot is much more than the risk of getting a COVID and dying because of the COVID, that you have to decide yourself. But yes, my take will be that yes, if a vaccine is available, you must take the vaccine because it will help you to prevent the severe form of COVID, as the number of immunized population increases, the number of COVID cases will start coming down. And this has been proven by various studies. Israel is the country which is the example. They have been able to immunize their majority of the population, and they have stopped using the mask outside. But remember, they are using the mask inside in closed spaces. They are again advising that you have to use the mask when you are inside. So you will have to understand what is the epidemiology, what is the mechanism of transmission of COVID, how this mutant virus is changing, whether what is the R or what is the secondary attack rate. The secondary attack rate of this mutant virus is very, very high. We did a study in the first wave. We could find out the secondary attack rate in household contacts. It was only say around 27% or so. 3-4 more studies we could find in the literature, which was varying from 20 to 30% range. But now look around. If there is a COVID infection in the family, everybody in the family member, every one of the family member is having the COVID. So infectivity is great. So that is the point. So you have to outweigh both the benefit as well as the risk. In my opinion, if you are lucky enough to get a shot of the jab of the vaccine, you should be ready to take it. Don't waste your opportunity and don't wait. Don't wait.
Thank you, sir. As you said, many young people are dying these days. Even one of my colleagues who's a junior resident in AIIMS Patna, he expired 2 days before or because of COVID. He's around 25 only. So even many junior doctors, very young people are dying in this second wave. So we should be promoting vaccination. So my next question is that I heard through WhatsApp messages that women who are menstruating, they should not take vaccine. And then I also heard that pregnant women and lactating women should not be taking vaccine. I heard the list is so large. So can you please say who all should not take vaccines?
So you see, when the vaccine came, there were few contraindications, right? Menstruation is not a contraindication for the uptake of vaccine. Point number one. Lactating women are again, it's not a contraindication to take the vaccine. Point number two. These are now two things which are clear. Pregnant women, still there is not a guideline. I have not seen a guideline what is, because pregnancy is something in which we do not know what is happening. So, and there are no studies on the pregnant women as far as the vaccines are concerned. Until unless we have some kind of evidence, we cannot say with surety whether they should take it or not. But the guarded answer again will be that you have to outweigh the risk and the benefit, what is happening. If you see, you must understand one more thing. Even the best vaccine is giving you how much protection? 91%, 92%. But if you are wearing double mask, right? How much protection is there? 95% protection. So if you are belonging to a category where the use is not documented or recommended, then you should use the double mask and protect yourself. You can easily protect yourself. As and when the science will come forward, as and when the evidence will be there. Like initially there was no evidence for the lactating woman, but now there is an evidence that it can be given to the lactating woman, right? But pregnancy, my knowledge is limited. I will not say either yes or no. Again, you have to outweigh the risk and benefit, whatsoever is there, because there are hardly any studies on pregnancy.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next question. Should a person with COVID infection can take a vaccine? Is it needed to take vaccine? And if so, when can he take vaccine after COVID?
Okay, now you have come back to the same thing. If somebody has COVID infection, again, he has been exposed to the natural virus. And there was a debate which was going on, and the IPSM as well as IPHA was of the strong opinion, because we are not in a situation where we have, say, more number of doses of vaccine and a less number of people. We are in a situation where people are more and less vaccine is there. Once you are exposed and you have got a natural infection, again, we are talking of, again, estimation of antibodies. Again, there are two types of antibodies. What antibodies, again, are being measured, whether they are the neutralizing antibodies are being measured. But then we are not measuring T cell and B cell. T cell assays is being tried in US. Hopefully it will come up. So you see, if your T cell and B cells are stimulated or formed, or memory cells are already there after a natural infection, what is the utility of taking a vaccine immediately? And that is why probably the government has changed the guideline now, that anybody who is infected, who is RT-PCR positive, can wait for 6 months or so to take a vaccine. But as far as my knowledge goes, you see, if a natural infection cannot protect you, then the vaccine is also not going to protect you. Forget about the antibodies. I am talking about the T cell and B cell. I have seen few cases of reinfection. But then those cases are very, very mild. Similarly, what the vaccine is doing, again, I told you, the vaccine is not going to prevent the occurrence of infection, but infection will be mild. The severity will be less. So same thing the vaccine is doing. So in my opinion may differ with the guidelines, but I am of a strong opinion that once you have had a natural infection, we have to wait for more evidence to come in, whether we need the vaccine. But as far as my knowledge of infectious diseases is concerned, I can tell you, like measles, you see, there, all of you must have heard the name of measles, and you know the one attack of measles gives you a lifelong immunity. And once you are vaccinated, then we say that there is no need. But then on the other end, you must understand, when we run a program, there are a lot of logistic and feasibility issues which comes into, because ultimately, who is doing the vaccination? I can ask you this question. You must have seen the MR campaign. In MR campaign, are we asking whether you had measles or you had a measles vaccination? No, we are saying irrespective of the history of measles or measles vaccination, you'll have to give the vaccine, right? So that is the point. Now the doubt in the mind of the people is again there, because again, it is emergency use authorization. Once it becomes irregular, then the scenario will be different. But right now, the government has rightly accepted the guideline, and they have deferred the vaccination of the infected person for 6 months or so. Maybe some more studies will come up, and then the guideline will change, as I told you in the beginning.
Thank you, sir. And
Sorry, sir. So moving on to the next question. Can COVID vaccine be co-administered with other vaccines? For example, a person facing with RTA and is supposed to take TT. In such case, can he take a tetanus toxoid shot, or what should he do regarding co-administration?
Okay. Well, I'll share one example with you now. Of course, the guidelines say that there should be a difference of 14 days as far as the vaccination is concerned. But then you have to decide. And I'm sharing you a live example. 3 days back, I got a call from one of my COVID patient that his brother had a dog bite, right? And it was unprovoked dog bite. Now, and he has been vaccinated only yesterday with COVID vaccine. Now, what should we do? Shall we give a rabies vaccine or not?
As you said earlier, I think we should weigh the risk versus benefit and decide.
Yeah, they decide. So because the risk of rabies is, you see, is 100%. If you develop rabies, then there's a 100% mortality. So you are going to die. So these kind of scenarios will keep on changing. These kind of scenarios will keep on changing with time. And you have to decide what is required. What is the risk? Like I told you in case of rabies, my answer was, yes, we cannot follow the guideline. He said, I consulted a doctor. He said, because the guideline is there, you will have to wait for 14 days. Manka, we cannot wait for 14 days, because if the dog is rabid, then in 14 days time, your brother will develop the rabies, and the consequences will be disastrous. So you'll have to give the vaccine. So we have to use the second schedule. If you can watch the dog, then maybe 0-3, and then you can 7 day onwards, if you can watch the dog and keep on seeing, and then for the third dose and so on. So whatsoever there is in the rabies, that kind of a guideline is to be given. So it is not a hard and fast. You must understand, actually there is a lot of confusion in the mind of the people. When we say guidelines, guidelines are guiding principles. It is the responsibility of the treating doctor to look into the guideline, because you see, guideline cannot cover each and everything. Guideline cannot cover each and everything. We are covering, say, majority of the common phenomena. But if there are uncommon phenomena, if there are exceptions, then you have to utilize your existing knowledge and take a decision, right? So normally, yes, if there is no emergency situation, you have to have minimum of 14 days gap as there is a guideline. But if there is an emergency situation, then you have to take action and you have to give the vaccine.
Thank you, sir. Very well answered. So next question is that there are rumors that new recommendation about the increase in gap between 2 doses of vaccine is a strategy to handle the inadequate stocks. What is your thoughts on this, sir?
Okay, you want to have my personal opinion. You see, when we started vaccination, that study was there in the January itself. But then one has to understand that you see, all the guidelines which are made, you have to understand the feasibility also. The feasibility of applying those guidelines. Again, that is important. And the thought process, what is the thought process again, that you'll have to understand. Okay, I'll give you one example. We are talking of, say, AstraZeneca vaccine. And as all of you know, that a single shot gives you 66% protection, right? Now, suppose, consider a scenario. And they say that if you keep the gap of 3 months, then the efficiency or the efficacy increases by 25% and it goes up to 81%, right? So that is the scenario. And we have a shortage of vaccine. Now consider a scenario that you are going to give vaccine to 100 people. And you give 1 dose to 100 people, how many are protected? 66. You give second dose to same 100 people, how many are protected? 81. Now let us change the scenario. We say we give the vaccine to 100 people, how many are protected? 66. Now we give the first shot to next 100 people, how many are protected? Another 66. Now what is the total? Out of 200, how many people are protected? 132. If we give the second dose after a month, then how many are protected? Maximum, even if you say that it is to cover up the, say, maybe the efficacy increase by 10% or 15%, maybe it goes to 80%. Even 80, only 80% will be, 80 number will be protected, because you are giving vaccine to same 100 people. So that is what the people have done. But then you must understand what is the prevailing situation in a country. If you are in a pandemic like situation where the case load is too much, right, then you have to decide what is the best for the people of that particular country. When the case load was less, that is why how the UK they deferred and they changed the guidelines and they deferred it to 12 weeks or so. Shortage and production, these are again administrative questions. These are not scientific questions. And there are a lot of confusion in the mind of the people. But then one must understand we are not politicians, we are academic people. And we have to give advice as per the evidence and as per the science. We do not know the nitty-gritty what is happening. And why should we comment on that? We are not politicians. I think this question is more of a political tone than of academic tone. Academically, yes, we know that if the gap is more, the efficacy is more.
Thank you, sir. And also few of my relatives and family members, they say that they take prophylactic measures as prescribed by people belonging to alternative stream of medicine. And they're asking, I'm already protected, why should I take vaccine? What should I say to them, sir?
So that is the problem with the awareness. And I'll tell you a story here again. You see, I gave you the example of measles, and all of you must be knowing the name of the strain, Edmonston Jagreb strain. And I often repeat this story. Why it is called Edmonston strain? Because the measles virus was isolated from the throat of the Edmonston when he was a child. And that is why the name was given Edmonston, right? When this Master Edmonston become Mr. Edmonston, got married, he had a son, and this Mr. Edmonston refused to give the same vaccine to his son. Right? Whose name the vaccine is there. So there are anti-vax lobbies everywhere, and there is a lack of awareness. You have to understand. You see, why, like Dr. Hassan said in the beginning, there was a lot of hesitancy. Now everybody is saying we need vaccine, we need vaccine, we need vaccine. Why? Unfortunately, because we had a second wave, and it was not expected by the politicians or the bureaucrats, but it was expected by the academic people. I predicted in February. I wrote in February, it is a lull before storm. Because you must understand, we are all susceptible. Either we get the natural infection or we get the vaccine. There are no two options. Whether you are increasing your immunity or you are not increasing your immunity, maybe your immunity is good, but still you will carry the virus and you will give the virus to your family members whose immunity may not be good. You may give a virus to a vulnerable person in your family whose immunity may not be good. So it is not a good choice to choose between the homemade or the various alternative therapies versus the vaccine. If you use the vaccine, probably there are chances that yes, you might not be able to transmit the virus, or even if you transmit, it will be in low doses. If you don't take it and you get the infection, which is severe, your viral load is more, so you will be transmitting to the vulnerable people in the family. And everybody can't have the same kind of immunity. You must understand, everybody is different. A small child and a 80-year-old man, the immunity status will be different. And there are so many variable as far as the COVID is concerned. COVID is beating us day and night every day. Every time COVID is taking the life of young people. On the other hand, I have a lot of 82, 84, 86-year-old patients who have fought COVID, who have survived. They are fine. So you see, there are multiple factors which are involved into the pathogenesis of COVID.
Thank you, sir. Sir, what do you think is the role of vaccine in this control of pandemic? And will this vaccine actually finish the pandemic, or what is its actual role, sir?
Okay, you must understand that when we talk in public health or in community medicine, we talk of three terms: control, elimination, and eradication. Unfortunately, COVID is not a candidate for elimination or eradication because of the fact that it has got incubatory carriers. The 40% infections are asymptomatics, so it is not a candidate for elimination or eradication. We can only control it. It is right now in the pandemic form. Then if it remain limited to a country, it may be there for some time in the epidemic form, and then from epidemic form, it might come down to endemic form. And depending upon the various evolving phenomena which will be happening inside the virus, it may remain there either in the hyperendemic stage or in holoendemic stage or at a low endemic prevalence. So we can't say anything about it. But yes, we are sure that it is not a candidate for elimination or eradication, and vaccination is not going to do that. It is not possible. Right now, it is not possible. I don't know about the future, but as far as you are talking about it, that whether the vaccine will finish the COVID, then the vaccine is not going to finish the COVID. COVID is going to stay, and you have to take precaution. You have to indulge in COVID appropriate behavior. That is the moot point. That is the take home message which everybody has to take on. You see, that is why it's a very good term which was coined by WHO. And I think all of us must keep on repeating, telling it in every language. You must understand, no one is safe till everyone is safe. I can give you the nth number of example. You see, the country which is the nearest to China is Taiwan. Taiwan used MDS to a great extent, and for 1 year they could fought with COVID. There was no COVID in Taiwan, but suddenly 1 month back there were more than 250 cases of COVID. So you are living in a jet age. From anywhere it can enter, and once it enters, and as you must have been taught, and if you are not taught, I'm reminding you again. You see, if a new infection occurs in a country, even a single case of a new infection is called as epidemic, because it can then give rise to chain of transmission which will be happening. So we are all having this COVID. All the countries are having this COVID, and we can brought it under control by all the measure, not only with the vaccine and MDH, both are required. If you fail in any one of them, then COVID will be happening again and again.
Thank you, sir. So let's take last few questions from the audience. One participant has asked when this pandemic will end.
When this pandemic will end? If you want a scientific answer, the pandemic will end when there will be no susceptible population. That is the best answer, I think.
Okay.
If the susceptible population is there, the pandemic will be there.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, and another question, for how long the immunity gained from vaccination will last?
Again, we are going into future. We need the evidences, and whatever studies and evidences are coming up. They are saying now that our fears are ill-founded. Maybe the immunity will last much more longer than what is anticipated, but that time will tell. I am not an astrologer by which I can predict that for how long the immunity is going to last. Again, we'll have to see, and we have to look for how the evidence-based studies are conducted and found out what is happening. It is going to take time. It's a new infection. We cannot predict anything. And you must have seen the predictions going haywire and wrong even by the academic people, right? So models, they can work, but then you cannot change the behavior of the people. You must understand the transmission of COVID is directly related to the behavior of the people. If people don't change the behavior, and the virus is there in the environment, and the susceptible population is there in the environment, as a student of community medicine or as a student of public health, you tell me whether there will be cases or not. Whether you are vaccinated or not, there will be. And vaccine, again, does not prevent the occurrence of infection. You have to remember, these are 3-4 take-home messages. You must understand, vaccination does not prevent the occurrence of infection. It does prevent the severity of the disease. Point number 2, everybody who is vaccinated is not immunized. It depends upon the efficacy of the vaccine. So you have to take MDH once again. MDH will have to again that mask, distance, and hand sanitation is a must. Hand hygiene is a must. If you keep on practicing these, then even if you get infection, chances are you will be getting a very mild infection, right?
Okay, sir. Sir, and there are a few more questions from the audience asking that whether diabetic patients who have uncontrolled glycemic values and anemic patients, can these people who are having other comorbidities, are they contraindicated from taking vaccines?
No, not at all. Not at all. Rather, these are the people who should be vaccinated at first, because these people are they are at a higher risk of getting the severe kind of disease.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. And what about alcohol and consuming alcohol and smoking immediately before and after vaccination? Should they stop or can they continue?
I think it is written in your textbook that some people they commit suicide by drowning and some people they commit suicide by smoking. So if somebody wants to commit suicide by smoking and drinking, I can't help it. I am a strong opponent of all these two things. You must understand, and then the people must be watching. You see, if you are watching a movie on a channel, if you are watching an English movie, they write this statutory warning even on every English movie that alcohol consumption is harmful to health. Smoking is injurious to health. So it is a high time that these two bad habits must be stopped, because why should we encourage? I will. You are asking me the same question. Like when we promote exclusive breastfeeding, and somebody asks me, "No, I want to give bottle feeding. Tell me how to sterilize the bottle." I say you can change the doctor. You can go to someone else. I will not tell you how to sterilize the bottle. You will have to continue with the exclusive breastfeeding. Why should I give you the answer? Whether you can smoke or you cannot you can drink. These are bad things. These are bad for health, right? If you read the A, B, C, D, E of WHO, so they say avoid alcohol. They say don't smoke. So why should we answer this question? I'm not ready to. I'm very radical about all these things, and we should be very strict. Why should, if something is harmful to health, and then you expect us to give an answer whether after taking vaccine you can smoke or you can drink? I think I am not going to give you the answer. I'm not a right person because I have my own biases. I will not give you the answer. I'm not going to promote smoking or alcohol on any forum. We have to prevent it.
So final question, sir. People who are vulnerable, especially healthcare workers, should they be given booster dose of vaccine? If so, when?
Booster dose of vaccine, still there is no guideline for the booster dose of the vaccine. I have not read it. People are trying different kind of things. Of course, mix match of the vaccines are being tried. There is a trial which is going on using the different kind of vaccine, right? Mixing the vaccines. But as far as the booster is concerned, that again the time will tell. Right now, we don't have the evidence. We have started the immunization program in our country right in the January, and we are in the month of May, right? So, and still we do not know how many of them have got the second dose. The timing has been increased. So where is the question of a booster a booster comes in? Why, again, these are futuristic questions, and I am not that knowledgeable to answer whether because I am not an astrologer whether the booster will be required or not. If it will be required, it will come up. I cannot give you the answer right now. As I told you in the beginning, maybe after 6 months again, if we meet again and have a session on vaccines, maybe we have to revise a lot of our answers, because the COVID is the best teacher. COVID is teaching us again and again.
Thank you, sir. A few more questions are unanswered, but due to time constraints, we are coming to the end of the session. So, audience, if they have any doubts, they can directly write to sir. Sir is available in almost all the social media platforms, or you can write to me also. So, hereby we are closing the session. And to thank our honorable speaker and all our participants, I request my mentor and IMA JDN National Convener, Dr. Shiv Joshi sir, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Harivansh sir, I think your session today was an excellent effort towards curbing the infodemic that is revolving around the COVID vaccination. And we, all of us here, appreciate the clarity that you have provided around the various myths related to COVID vaccination. And so we are sure that this would have also helped our delegates to have an accurate information and more confidence henceforth while recommending COVID vaccination to their patients, friends, as well as relatives. So we are also thankful to have the guidance of Dr. Abul Hassan sir, who has also made time to be with us today. I, as the national convener, and my colleague Karan, who is also the general secretary, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Venkatesh and his entire team for taking the initiative to arrange this webinar. Thank the team Clearnet for arranging the logistics to enable a glitch-free session today. We as Team IMA JDN thank all the participants for attending this session, and we hope to have you in our upcoming sessions and webinars and to get you involved in our JDN activities. Thank you. Over to Venkatesh.
Thank you so much, sir. I once again thank our speaker, Dr. Harivansh Chopra sir, Abul Hassan sir, Shiv Joshi sir, Dr. Karan, and all our wonderful participants who made this webinar a great success. Hope the knowledge gained out of this webinar will be disseminated widely and will help us to increase the vaccine coverage. Hope to see you all soon in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Abul, so much.
Thank you all. I'm closing for today.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.